Welcome to Cockpit Conversations. This is Gary Coxe, and I've got Julien with me. And as you can tell, we're in the cockpit today, so every so often we're going to have to interrupt you or be interrupted, and you'll see our finger go up or something like that, which means the ATC, air traffic controllers, they're going to talk to us a little bit. And with that being said, we're going to interview Julien. Julien works for a multi-billion-dollar company, and he does a lot of leadership and management. So I wanted him to share with you the difference between leadership and management. Let's start off with that, Julien, and welcome to Cockpit Conversations.
Hey, thanks, Gary. I mean, there's a big difference when people talk about managers and leaders, right? And you've got some of the basic definitions, but in my world, I think you can be a great manager and a great leader at the same time, right? But if I had to pick, obviously, a leader to me has much further growth, much farther following as far as the employees, and I think you can obtain much higher goals. So through that process, I would say, if I had to put it in simple terms, what defines a leader to me is, will your employees or associates follow your lead when you're not present, right?
That's good. So let me stop you right there.
Yep.
How do you instill that happens? Do you make sure you're hiring the people that automatically are self-motivated, or are you giving directions and saying, hey, can you repeat this to me? And then when I come back and check in, you will confirm with me that these things are done. How do you do that?
So good question, and I think that's where mixing being a manager and a leader comes into play. So whether you're hiring somebody with not all the skills, right, what I look for is if somebody has the will. If somebody has the will, we can teach the skill. And with that being said, teaching the skill sometimes means let me manage you through, sometimes micromanage through a teaching format, but then leave you enough room so that you can take the initiative, right, have the self-motivation, and maybe sometimes make mistakes, and that's where the leader comes in and says, hey, you've made a mistake that I've identified, right? Let me tell you what should have happened. Now you try it again on your own. Versus
so you're okay with micromanaging for a limited time just to get the training set up.
Correct. Sometimes training you're going to be hands-on, or you're going to be side by side, or you're going to really give detailed instruction, and that's managing. That's micromanaging to an extent,
right.
But then you've got to learn that even though you can do it better, right? Pull back and let that person develop themselves, let that person make mistakes, and then they're eventually going to get better than you, because the definition of a true leader is we know what needs to be accomplished. But we shouldn't know how to do it better than our employees, right? The employee should be the very productive, very, very result-driven associate. We just know what, when, and where, and know who to go to.
So how do you evaluate whether somebody's taking on that leadership role? Do you have a monthly evaluation, a quarterly evaluation? Is it just a conversation? Is it something written so they can measure it next time? How does that work?
So, good ask. I say a little bit of all of the above. And there's something called coaching by walking around, right? So you can have feedback for improvement, right? So you can have consistent feedback, and that feedback is not limited to just work. I think getting to know an associate, how's your family? Do you have any pets, right? Did you enjoy your last vacation? I think that builds a bond.
Do they have more respect for you and listen to you more? Or?
Yeah, and I think
just not busting them all the time.
It's not just business, it's business. It's not 2 + 2 = 4. It's, hey, let me be a human to you. Even though my title may say I'm above you, let me show you I'm just another person. We're on the same team, I'm just a quarterback, right?
Right.
And so by doing so, I think that coaching by walking around, you're establishing a bigger bond, so that when you do say, hey, either, hey, come to my office, I've noticed you made a big mistake, let's go over it, let's see what we could have done different, and let's understand the consequences of doing it again, right? And that's more of a reprimand conversation, but then you can also have positive conversation. Usually I would say those in a meeting format are better. Hey, I'd like to recognize Gary. He had great compliments from, I don't know, maybe these 3 customers. And those are kind of as you go, but I definitely think that minimum a quarterly review, and a verbal, not a documented. Maybe just let's see where you stand, and let's see where I want you to go, and how you're going to get there is by improving this. So always focusing on maybe what they're not doing so well, but hey, I want you to get there. By doing that, you've got to correct what you're not doing well, right?
Sure.
So it stays positive. And then having a mid-year or yearly evaluation where that's a documented, all right, maybe you get a pay raise, and here's how you can get more of a pay raise, and here's your value contributor, solid performer, or I don't know, an exceeds performer, right? And that goes into a document, so people have that yearly, that yearly go-to. I want to improve myself, and incentivizing that is always best, right? If you give them coaching by walking around, and then if you give them quarterly undocumented, unofficial evals to let them know where they stand, so they have a chance to course correct, and then at the end you say, hey, nothing's new, right? We've talked about this. This is where you're at. You've exceeded expectations. You're getting a good raise. Now next year, you can't do the same thing you're doing. You've got to continue that self-improvement, right?
I like it. Yeah. So define for me coaching while walking around. What does that mean? So I'll give you an idea. Two things. You've got the personal and you've got the business. So personal is, hey Gary, how you doing? I haven't seen you in a few days. How's family? How's life? Good, good. And didn't you take a vacation 3-4 weeks ago? Yeah. Tell me about that. Where'd you go? Oh, you know what? I've been to Ecuador. I love Ecuador. Where did you guys go? Just that personal touch, and it can be 5 minutes.
Contact deck approach 124.9.
On the business side, it would be maybe you're walking around, you're kind of checking in on what your associates are doing.
Right.
Hey Gary, do me a favor, or hey, can you come over here? Can you pause what you're doing and let me show you something that I've noticed. I'd like to improve in how we're doing.
Golf Sierra, Jet Center, span altimeter 29.
And how we're doing things. And let me show you what I'm expecting. Let me partner you with Gene or whomever that's been here for 20 years.
Yeah, I like that.
That's going to show you the ropes. And then
1073,
hopefully you can do the same. I believe you can do the same, right? And so that's a 5-minute interaction that's really business driven, but it's very positive. And so coaching by walking around isn't reprimanding by walking around. It's you're in public. You've got to be conscious that that person's got their pride.
Right.
That person, you got to keep them motivated. They're obviously clocked into work.
Remember 231.
And it's really coming in and coaching. A coach is positive, right? So that's how I picture coaching by walking around.
I like that. And then how do you, because you're dealing with a considerable amount of people, how do you mentally remember all of this? Do you ever take notes, or is it just enough people that you can remember next time you see them a month from now or 6 months from now? Is there any magic to that?
Well, I've got some by the book rules, I guess, that I abide by. Yeah. And one of those is if you're new to a team, okay, let's say you're coming into a new team, your first week, I take the time to meet and greet every single person, okay? And tell me one thing about you and I'll tell you about me. The second is, whether it's you are new or the team is new or you kind of have a revolving door, you're going through some high turnover based on inflation, whatever the case may be, you set some very strict meetings. Therefore, maybe every Friday you have an associate meeting. You have some donuts, you've got some healthy food, and you basically just have those meetings and you get to know people. But realistically, the coaching by walking is what gets you to drive that into your mind that, hey, I'm getting to know that person on the personal level, but they still respect me as their boss.
I love it. All right, so there's another Cockpit Conversations between leadership and management.